1. Eddie Hearn slams Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua, 50-50 fight. 2. Jake Paul's next fight, Canelo or Badou Jack. 3. Tyson Fury calls Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua 50-50 fight. 4. Eddie Hearn warns, Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua could be a deadly mismatch. Boxing news. 5. Julio César Chávez Jr. arrested by IC, cartel ties, visa fraud and deportation after Jake Paul fight. 1. Eddie Hearn slams Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua, 50-50 fight. Eddie Hearn's candid take on the controversial 50-50 fight between Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul. In the world of boxing, few statements can stir up as much debate as the idea of a 50-50 fight. Recently, Jake Paul made headlines with his impressive victory over Julio César Chávez Jr., which led him to call out several prominent fighters, including Anthony Joshua and Gervonta Davis. But here's where it gets controversial. Tyson Fury, a heavyweight champion, suggested that a match between Paul and Joshua could be evenly matched. Matchroom Boxing's promoter, Eddie Hearn, was quick to respond to this bold claim. In a recent interview with pro boxing fans, Hearn expressed skepticism about the notion of a balanced fight between Joshua and Paul. He remarked, "It's great if it is a 50-50 fight. I mean, if it is, then you've got no problem seeing it." However, his tone suggested that he was more focused on the promotional aspect rather than the actual competitive nature of the bout. When discussing how the fight might unfold, Hearn didn't hold back. He stated, "When decapitates is a strong word. When he renders Jake Paul unconscious like he did to Francis Ngannou, don't then say, oh well, it was Jake Paul. Do you know what I mean?" This statement underscores Hearn's belief that Joshua's power and experience would likely overwhelm Paul, who, according to Hearn, is not on the same level as Ngannou, a seasoned MMA fighter. Hearn further emphasized, Jake Paul is not Francis Ngannou. If you want to see Jake Paul exit the boxing world, make the fight. This bold assertion invites fans to consider whether Paul, despite his growing reputation, can truly compete with elite boxers like Joshua. Anthony Joshua's future, uncertainty looms despite rumors of a 2025 comeback. As for Anthony Joshua, his next opponent remains a mystery even as speculation grows about his return to the ring in 2025. This upcoming fight would mark Joshua's first appearance since his knockout defeat to Daniel Dubois. The situation has become even more complicated with Tyson Fury's recent announcement of his return from retirement, which has left fans wondering about the potential for a highly anticipated showdown between the two heavyweights. Fury has expressed a desire to face Oleksandr Usyk for his comeback fight, aiming for a match in 2026. Meanwhile, the identity of Joshua's opponent this year is still unclear. However, following Deontay Wilder's recent victory, many boxing enthusiasts believe that a clash between Joshua and the Bronze Bomber would be a thrilling matchup. As the boxing world watches closely, the question remains, can Jake Paul truly compete with established champions like Anthony Joshua, or is this just another case of hype overshadowing reality? What are your thoughts on this potential matchup? Do you agree with Eddie Hearn's assessment, or do you think Paul has what it takes to surprise everyone? Share your opinions in the comments. 2. Jake Paul's next fight, Canelo or Badou Jack. Jake Paul's next move could redefine his boxing career or expose its greatest weakness. Fresh off his decisive victory over Julio César Chávez Jr. in June 2024, the polarizing YouTuber-turned-boxer has set his sights on two championship-caliber opponents that could either validate his athletic ambitions or reveal them as pure spectacle. But here's where it gets controversial. Paul isn't just chasing any contenders. He's demanding fights with pound-for-pound King Saul, Canelo Alvarez, and current WBC champion Badou Jack. Let that sink in. The same influencer who built his 12-1 record primarily against MMA fighters and retired athletes now wants to challenge boxing royalty. Following his WBA cruiserweight ranking, currently number 14, Paul publicly thanked the organization's leadership for recognizing his progress while simultaneously calling out 168-pound unified champion Canelo. This is the same Canelo who dominates 3 major sanctioning body belts, a fighter operating 2 weight classes above Paul's usual competition. Here's what most critics overlook. Paul's dual-target strategy reveals calculated career maneuvering. By pursuing both the legendary Canelo, a massive commercial draw, and the respected but less mainstream Badou Jack, current WBC cruiserweight titleist, Paul positions himself as either a daring underdog or a credible contender depending on public perception. His recent social media posts frame these challenges as tests of boxing's willingness to evolve. Shout out to the WBA for being disruptors, Paul declared, positioning himself as the sport's controversial innovator. Yet the elephant in the ring remains. Can a content creator turned part-time pugilist genuinely compete with elite professionals? Analysts argue Paul's carefully curated opponents, including non-boxers and faded stars, leave his true skill level shrouded in mystery. But here's the twist no one predicted. If Paul secures either fight and demonstrates legitimate competitiveness, it would force the boxing world to confront uncomfortable questions about gatekeeping, athlete development, and what constitutes real boxing credentials in the digital age. Now we turn to you, the fans. Is Jake Paul's audacious challenge to Canelo and Jack a bold step toward legitimacy, or a publicity stunt banking on rejected offers? Could beating a champion like Badou Jack actually rewrite his narrative, or would it simply prove he can outpromote seasoned fighters? And this is the part that divides commentators. Should boxing traditionalists welcome this injection of new audiences, or fear the dilution of competitive standards? Drop your take in the comments. We're betting the debate will be fiercer than a championship round slugfest. 3. Tyson Fury calls Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua 50-50 fight. Brace yourself for a bold take. Tyson Fury has just labeled a potential Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua matchup as a real 50-50 fight. Whether you're a boxing diehard or a casual fan, that statement alone is bound to stir debate and get you wondering what's really going on behind the scenes. Let's break it down. Tyson Fury, who recently announced intentions for a 2026 return to the ring in pursuit of a third showdown with Alexander Usyk, finds himself back in the headlines. According to Turki Alashik, the influential Saudi sports boss, Fury vs. Usyk 3 is definitely happening, potentially lighting up Wembley Stadium in April 2026. This announcement conveniently coincides with Alashik's promotion of Usyk's upcoming pay-per-view battle against Daniel Dubois on July 19th. Is this just a publicity move, or a glimpse into boxing's future? That's up for interpretation and discussion. Meanwhile, Anthony Joshua's name keeps popping up in the boxing conversation. Not only do people still speculate about a long-awaited Joshua vs. Fury megafight, but Jake Paul, YouTube sensation turned professional boxer, sort of called Joshua out after his recent victory over Julio César Chávez Jr. If you missed it. Paul secured a dominant win on June 28, further fueling rumors about his next big celebrity opponent. Asked about the idea of Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua, Fury didn't hesitate to hype it up. I think it's a good fight. I think it's a real 50-50 fight. And here's the part that's sure to ruffle feathers. Fury has never been shy about poking fun at Joshua's boxing skills, once suggesting AJ lacks the technical prowess to dominate the sport. Is Tyson simply continuing his tradition of trolling? Or does he genuinely believe Paul has a chance against a former world heavyweight champion like Joshua? That's the controversy at the heart of his comment. Now, let's not ignore that many fans are still holding out hope for a Fury vs. Joshua clash, despite years of false starts and missed opportunities. Even if the fight wouldn't attract the record-breaking attention it once could have, most agree it would still rake in massive pay-per-view numbers. The question is, are these ongoing jabs and callouts just clever marketing, or do they signal that these matchups might finally materialize? And this is the part most people miss. Whether or not Fury truly thinks Jake Paul could hold his own against Anthony Joshua isn't actually the main point. What matters is that Fury, ever the showman, keeps both fans and foes invested with his playful provocations. But what do you think? Would Jake Paul stand even the slightest chance against Anthony Joshua in a real fight, or is Tyson Fury just stirring the pot for attention? And will we ever actually see Fury vs. Joshua, or has that ship sailed? Chime in with your thoughts. Do you agree with Fury, or do you think he's just having a laugh? 4. Eddie Hearn warns. Jake Paul vs. Anthony Joshua could be a deadly mismatch. Boxing news. When you think about the potential dangers of combat sports, few matchups raise as many eyebrows or concerns as the hypothetical clash between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. The idea of a YouTube-turned boxer stepping into the ring with one of boxing's most formidable heavyweights is enough to make even casual fans nervous. But here's where it gets controversial. Should such a fight ever happen? And if it does, could we be witnessing something catastrophic? These questions have sparked heated debates among boxing enthusiasts and beyond. To put things into perspective, consider what Anthony Joshua recently did to Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion who went toe-to-toe with Tyson Fury just months prior. Joshua dismantled Ngannou in devastating fashion, showcasing his immense power and technical prowess. Now imagine this same towering figure who stands at an imposing 6 feet 6 inches with an incredible 82-inch reach facing off against Jake Paul, a man whose career trajectory has been more reality TV than traditional pugilism. Paul, now 28 years old, seems unfazed by the skepticism surrounding his ambitions. He's repeatedly called out Anthony Joshua, labeling him as someone without much resilience due to past performances in high-stakes fights. However, Eddie Hearn, the promoter behind Matchroom Boxing, isn't convinced that this bout would be anything but disastrous for Paul. According to Hearn, the difference in size, skill level, and experience between the two fighters creates what he calls a catastrophic mismatch. Speaking to TalkSport, Hearn didn't mince words when discussing the risks involved. Jake Paul is calling out Gervonta Davis, who weighs in at 135 pounds, and then he turns around and names Anthony Joshua a heavyweight giant, Hearn explained. I believe Jake Paul might actually take on Anthony Joshua because the financial reward would be astronomical. But let's not kid ourselves, this is a recipe for disaster. People would tune in expecting fireworks, but realistically it could spell the end for Jake Paul's career and possibly worse. While Hearn acknowledged the entertainment value of such a spectacle, he emphasized its inherent danger. It's not like Anthony Joshua wakes up every morning dreaming about fighting Jake Paul, he added. But if you dangled a life-changing sum of money in front of him, sure, he'd step in there and dominate. Do I personally think this fight should happen? Honestly, no. There are better ways to build both fighters' legacies. Despite these warnings, Jake Paul continues to push forward in his quest for legitimacy within the sport. After defeating Julio César Chávez Jr. earlier this year, Paul earned recognition from the World Boxing Association, WBA, placing him within their cruiserweight rankings. While some critics dismiss this move as purely commercial, others see merit in acknowledging Paul's rapid progress since discovering boxing relatively late in life. Hearn himself offered a nuanced take on Paul's achievements. Many governing bodies operate with a mix of tradition and business interests, he said. Some may see benefits in including Jake Paul in their rankings to attract attention. Personally, I think being ranked in the top 100 of the cruiserweight division is no small feat for someone who started boxing in their mid-20s. Yes, he still has a long way to go before reaching world-class status, but he's shown improvement and dedication. In a strange way, I almost respect his hustle. Meanwhile, Anthony Joshua finds himself in a different phase of his career. At 35, he hasn't fought since losing decisively to Daniel Dubois last fall. Much of the buzz around Joshua centers on a potential rematch with Tyson Fury, though recent developments suggest Fury may prioritize other opportunities over facing Joshua again. With Saudi Arabia seemingly eager to host megafights, the path to securing a blockbuster showdown remains uncertain for both men. For Jake Paul, patience might be the key. As Saul Canelo Alvarez bluntly stated during a recent interview, major stars aren't lining up to face Paul anytime soon. For now, it seems Paul will need to wait until some of boxing's elite retire before landing the marquee matchup he so desperately seeks. So, where do you stand on this debate? Should Jake Paul be allowed to pursue fights against opponents like Anthony Joshua, or is this a bridge too far for safety and credibility in the sport? Share your thoughts below, let's keep the conversation going. 5. Julio César Chávez Jr. arrested by IC, cartel ties, visa fraud and deportation after Jake Paul fight. A shocking turn of events has left the boxing world in a state of disbelief. Just days after an explosive fight with Jake Paul, Mexican boxer Julio César Chávez Jr. found himself in the clutches of IC, facing imminent deportation from the United States. This story is a gripping tale of high-profile boxing, alleged cartel ties, and the controversial policies of the Trump administration. The son of legendary boxer Julio César Chávez, Chávez Jr. entered the U.S. on a tourist visa in 2023. However, his visa expired in February 2024, and he soon became entangled in a web of legal issues. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Chávez Jr. made fraudulent statements on his immigration application and had an active arrest warrant in Mexico for alleged involvement in organized crime and trafficking of firearms, ammunition, and explosives. But here's where it gets controversial. Chávez Jr. filed for permanent residency in April 2024, citing his marriage to a U.S. citizen. However, DHS officials claim that his wife has connections to the Sinaloa drug cartel through a past relationship with one of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's sons. This alleged link to the cartel has become a pivotal point in the case. Chávez Jr. was allowed to re-enter the country in January 2025, but the U.S. government determined he was illegally present and could be removed as early as June 27. It was during this time that he fought Jake Paul, losing in a unanimous decision. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin's statement was scathing. The Sinaloa cartel affiliate with an active arrest warrant for trafficking guns and explosives was arrested by ICE. It's shocking that the previous administration flagged this criminal illegal alien as a public safety threat but chose not to prioritize his removal. The days of unchecked cartel violence are over. The Trump administration has made the deportation of undocumented immigrants a top priority since the president's return to office in January. This has led to mass deportations, the use of domestic camps as detainment sites, and even the housing of deportees in foreign prisons. These policies have sparked weeks of unrest in Los Angeles and caused a rift between the federal government and the Los Angeles Dodgers over the presence of U.S. Customs and Border Protection vehicles at Dodger Stadium. The fight between Paul and Chávez Jr. took place in Anaheim, California, just a short distance from Los Angeles. Despite the Mexican boxer's popularity with the crowd, he suffered a resounding defeat in his second fight in 4 years. Chávez Jr.'s career record stands at July 1, 54 with 34 knockouts. This story raises important questions about the intersection of sports, immigration, and politics. Should athletes with alleged cartel ties be treated differently? Is the Trump administration's deportation policy effective, or does it cause more harm than good? These are the kinds of discussions that keep the public engaged and informed. What are your thoughts on this controversial case? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below.